Now welcome to another lightning response video, where this time I'm going to take some questions from yesterday's video about Kathleen Kennedy and answer them, and once this is done, I think we'll move on from the topic of Kennedy for a little while, unless some more news breaks. Anyway, let's kick it off with this question from Kali, who asked, "Hey Thor, a lot of people are saying this means Kennedy isn't leaving. However, she does mention in the article that an announcement about her future may be made in months or a year. She also implies that she'll leave it very soon. Is it possible she will still be leaving when we thought she would, but when her and Disney heard the news come out and the press from it, that they weren't happy, and she didn't want the thunder taken from her? I believe that it is entirely possible she announces she's leaving at the end of the year during Star Wars Celebration, and I hold out hope for that. I really don't understand why Disney has kept her this long with what's happened to the franchise. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. I love your passion for Star Wars and your honesty in what you do. Thank you." And when I read the article, I did kind of get this sense of frustration from Kennedy, and that could just be me sort of projecting what I think her tone would be onto her, and she didn't mean it in any way, shape, or form like that she's not upset about this. But you'd really imagine she is upset about this, right? And trying to be fair, I could understand that she's upset, that she kind of has this game plan. She's going to, as I've suggested, announce her departure from Lucasfilm at Celebration. They already have a bunch of plans for Celebration about what they're going to do and how it will be celebrated. And then before she can make the announcement, the story breaks that she's leaving, and she's all upset. And she right away, because this was like a day after the initial announcement, she had this interview with Deadline. And so it feels like she immediately got out there and was like, no, this is all on me. This is my decision. This is what I am going to do when I'm ready. I have been talking to Disney. This isn't like new or me being forced out. She really kind of emphasized that. And we are picking a replacement. And even when they're gone, I'm going to stick around and help out. And I'm going to be working on some of these other projects. And so again, while reading the article, and I don't want to say it definitively like I know for sure, it's just my feeling that, yeah, she was upset. And there's a really good chance that the article was dead on, or the initial report about her leaving was kind of dead on, that it will be happening relatively soon. The announcement will be happening soon, and she will still be gone by the end of the year. But she didn't want to make it seem like the article was right. Though if you do read what she says, as you point out in your question here, she does say the announcement could be months or a year away. So it really does feel like maybe this was just her kind of replying and being upset, and the game plan hasn't changed. She was initially and is still going to be leaving by the end of the year, and an announcement will come at Celebration, and her replacement will also be announced. That this is all sort of set in stone, but she didn't want to make it seem like it was. She wanted this all on her terms, like this was all her decision, and she wanted to be the one who framed it, essentially, instead of it maybe feeling like she's being pushed out, which has been the rumor for a long time. As you say here, I don't understand why Disney has kept her this long. And so again, yeah, I think there's a really good chance she will be gone relatively soon, and she just wants it to be all on her terms, including the announcement itself. All right, and let's move on now to this question from Alistar Gray, who asked, "Hey Thor, imagine that she does get replaced, and the first thing the new person does is apologize to the fans in a press conference. Imagine that they promise to do better and lay out a plan to hire better people to run the franchise. People who genuinely care about the fans and the creative properties. Do you think that would help in any way?" And before answering that question, I want to go back quickly to the Kennedy interview. It will relate to your question. But in it, she talked about the hiring process a little bit, how to get top talent, sometimes you have to meet them halfway, and that the goal has been to bring in top talent to Lucasfilm, for the most famous and well-known and prestigious writers and directors, which I certainly understand to a degree. Sometimes I think that works really well, like with Tony Gilroy coming in to patch up Rogue One and then to do Andor, and she's even asked in this interview if Tony Gilroy would consider doing more Star Wars, and she doesn't think so. She said he's already kind of committed a lot of time to it and doesn't think that's what he would want to do. But anyway, I have talked before about how I think Star Wars is the premier franchise, or if you are the president of Lucasfilm, you need to treat Star Wars like the premier franchise and approach others like you have the premier franchise. And though, yes, Hollywood is a different sort of beast, don't get me wrong, and I do not know what it is like to run Lucasfilm or to be a executive in Hollywood or anything of the sort, But I've always thought if you have Star Wars, not that you should be a bully about it and demand certain things out of everybody who works for you, but you do have the premier franchise. And I do find it funny how she talks about catering to the top talent to bring them in, when, again, you are the top franchise, and that should be kind of an honor to come work on Star Wars. You should be willing to drop things. And if you're not, that's absolutely fine. Go do your own thing. But I do think they should go after people who are more genuinely interested in doing Star Wars than just being, hey, you're a top talent. We want your name attached to a project. We want you to come in here and you can do it on your own timetable. I've always found that a little strange when Star Wars should be the property everybody is kind of wanting to do and willing to bend over backwards to do. And if you're not, then move along and find something else. Anyway, that little tangent over, I do agree or do think that the next person up needs to say the right things right out of the gate. They need to come out and make a statement about what the future is going to look like and try to get the fans excited and hopeful that things are going to be different without maybe so overtly throwing Kennedy under the bus. I don't know that you openly apologize as much as you maybe allude to the fact that you understand people didn't necessarily enjoy the last person who had this job and that you're going to try to do a little better and do things a little differently than she did, that this is a fresh start for the franchise. That's kind of what I would focus on, saying that yes, Kennedy had her time. She left an indelible mark on the franchise. But now that time is over, and again, this is going to be a fresh start. We are kind of starting over without saying we are replacing what came before. We're trying to look ahead instead of just trying to look back. That's what I would focus on saying, again, without just overtly saying, yeah, we know you hated Kennedy. I'm here to take her place and to do things better than her and different from her. I think some subtlety will come in, and if there are some little clues in there that they acknowledge the fact that, again, people didn't like Kennedy, that would certainly be enough for me. Okay, and moving on now, we have this question from Violator who asked, Hey Thorpe, Star Wars cannot ever be saved without somehow rebooting the sequel trilogy. Everything else can be a mixture of quality, but it's all happening in the same universe where that awful story happened. I can't imagine feeling the same way about Star Wars again. Even Andor is only something I can enjoy as a self-contained series, rather than part of the wider universe. It's like being in a swimming pool trying to enjoy playing volleyball while knowing there's a massive poo floating down the other side. You can't ever forget it's there and it spoils the whole experience. And I agree and disagree with you, because I do think if you're doing things in the relative proximity of that big piece of poo floating in the pool, aka the sequel trilogy, I do think you're always concerned about it and worrying about it, and you know eventually you're gonna run into it. Sorry for that analogy, but if you get far enough away from it, if the pool is gigantic, if you are swimming in the ocean, there's fish poo everywhere, but that's not the point. But if you're swimming in an ocean, you're not worrying about an individual piece of poo, and I can't believe I'm going with this analogy. But my point is, if you went far enough in the future, if you went far enough into the Old Republic, or just different parts of the galaxy entirely, I don't know that the sequel trilogy matters. I'm not saying that it's an argument to keep it necessarily. You know, I would, if I was given the choice, I would say retcon it and try again, because I think that is a major sticking point for a lot of people, no matter what you decide to do or where you decide to go. But I do think in theory, and I've suggested it before, you could go 1,000 years into the future. You could be very vague about what happened 1,000 years ago, where you could kind of interpret it as, well, maybe they mean the EU is canon, or maybe they mean the Rey story is canon, or maybe there's another story that happened where Luke didn't go to an island because he wanted to die and see the Jedi end. I think you can get far enough away from the sequel trilogy that it just doesn't matter that, yes, it is a part of the universe and all roads either lead to it or lead from it, because it is such a minor blip on the radar because you're, again, so far away from it. But anyway, yeah, if you are doing things around the sequel trilogy or in the Skywalker saga era, or like the plan currently is to do movies set 5 to 10 to 15 years after it, where obviously that is going to be important to whatever is happening in the universe at that point, I think you do have the problem of the people who don't like the sequels, who hate the sequels, who think they are the worst thing that ever happened to Star Wars. They're just not going to be interested in that. And so I feel like your best options are to redo them or just move so far away from them that it just don't matter. All right, and one final quick question here, and it comes to us from Beastly Arrow, and I'm just going to kind of paraphrase because it's a longer one, and you can pause and read exactly what they asked if you want to. But they're basically talking about how, is it really all Kathleen Kennedy's fault? Should all the blame for what happened to Star Wars in the past decade really be placed upon her? Not that they think she isn't at fault at all, But is she the only one we should really be blaming? And the answer to that is no, but she is the president of Lucasfilm. She is the one who has to take the blame. I mean, you are the leader as a leader, or what a good leader does is they take responsibility. And so I do believe that a good portion of the, again, blame, if you want to look at it that way, which a lot of fans do, but a lot of the blame does fall on her shoulders. Now, it also falls on people like Bob Iger. If you read his book, you know he was heavily involved in the creation of the sequel trilogy. He had the final say. He was the CEO of Disney at the time. Though again, a lot of the blame does have to fall on her shoulders because she is the leader. And at the same time, yeah, we do have to give her some credit for the things that were good. She had a part to play in Andor, and Tony Gilroy himself, whether or not he was just kind of giving her lip service or he meant it wholeheartedly, but he did say a lot of this is thanks to Kathleen Kennedy. So again, no, she doesn't deserve all the blame, and she does deserve some credit, but as the president of Lucasfilm, she does have to bear responsibility for the state of the franchise. And again, as I've said, if you look at the numbers, if you look at how things have been going, it is not in a good place. And so it's time for her to go. Well, that is going to be all I got for you this time. Now it is your turn. Take to the comments below and tell me what you think about anything and everything I had to say here, or you can ask a question for a future lightning response video. And like I said at the top, we're going to move on from the topic of Kennedy. I want to answer some different questions, do some different videos. I got a lot of things lined up, hopefully coming out very soon, including a return to my stories. But whatever the case may be, leave those questions or comments below. Let's talk some Star Wars. And until next time, thanks for watching.